Welcome to the Psychology World podcast. I'm Connor Whiteley, bringing you psychology news, articles, and other interesting psychology-related articles. Where I can find the podcast notes and more interesting psychology-related things, and you can get your free 8 psychology book box set at connorwhiteley.net. Now let's get on to the show. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 34 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, and today's episode is on sleep and how does it work. So I actually wanted to do today's episode simply because in the news last week at the time of recording, and it's the 22nd of May 2020 as I record this, is that there was a news article saying that during the pandemic people have had trouble sleeping. So I thought, maybe I should do a podcast episode on sleep, just so you know how it works. So I quite like today's episode. So moving on to the psychology news section, we are returning to the British Psychological Society's Research Digest. So I've pulled out a few articles that I think will be interesting for us. So the first one is memory complaints are more common amongst older adults with particular personality traits. So the article reads, memory complaints are fairly common amongst elderly people. Together with low participation in cognitive demanding tasks such as reading or doing crosswords, they can predict future declines, including the risk of developing dementia. It might seem likely then that people with poorer cognitive functioning may report more problems and may be less able to engage in and so benefit from reading and other stimulating activities. However, a new paper suggests that another factor is more important in predicting both these complaints and engagement in stimulating activities: personality. And what the article then goes on to talk about is how important personality traits about making yourself more inclined to do creative activities and engage in more intellectual stuff. Stuff is the best term I can come up with, and how important that is. Yes, in other words, if you're more creative and you're more engaged in intellectual stuff, sorry about that, in old age, then you're less likely to get complaints about you having memory problems, as is keeping the brain active. So that's important to think about. And now that my grandma's sadly gone, that's something that we are going to make sure that my granddad does, is keep engaging in social activities and keep doing all of his intellectual stuff, because he is an intellectual. Not in terms of like an academic or whatever. He's very well knowledged. That probably made no sense to people. So moving on to the next article. So the other one that we're going to look at is the editor's pick. So small acts of kindness at work benefit the giver, the receiver, and the whole organisation. So it's Mental Health Awareness Week, and this year the theme is kindness. We've been posting some of our previous stories about kindness over on Twitter, including the 2017 piece on how small acts of kindness at work can benefit everyone. In the labs, psychologists can show how generosity reciprocates and spreads. If anyone is kind to us, we tend to pay it forward and act more generally to someone else when given the chance. But it's not clear if these findings are realistic. For example, when we are juggling priorities on a busy workday, might receiving an act of kindness actually be a nuisance, leaving us feeling indebted to return the favour when we've got more important things to do? An uplifting study in the Journal of Emotion looks at the act of altruism within a real-life work setting and shows how kindness really does ripple outwards from a good deed. And this is actually quite a nice story. God, I've definitely been thinking about fiction too much. So, well, anyway then, I've been doing a bunch of writing courses like this a week. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, so this is like a really nice story, and it just goes to show that just be kind to people, and when at work, just be kind to people, like make them a cup of tea, and this doesn't have to just apply for work, even in your own household, sorry. But just be nice to your parents, be nice to a sibling, even the really annoying brother or sister that you don't get on with, just be nice to them, offer to make them a cup of tea or something. So that's enough of the psychology news section. Let's move on to the personal update. Moving on to the personal update. So this week has been a bit slow at parts because in shortening the non-depressive way. As it's 2 weeks until my grandma's funeral, there's been a lot of prep and there's been a lot of, I don't know, not tears, but definitely a lot of, oh God, moments, because I had no idea how complicated it is when someone dies. It is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. As I'm laughing because the only other thing to do is cry, and I'm not crying on this podcast because probate, all I thought it was before was that your money goes through various systems, either gets taxed or it doesn't, and I have no idea to this what I thought probate was. But now what they want house evaluations, and it's just I'm so glad that my mum's decided to do it all because granted I was never gonna do that stuff, but it's just it's it's quite nice not to be directly involved whatsoever in all the funeral stuff. Granted, though, one benefit of the lockdown being slightly eased in at the UK is that we get to go out a bit for unlimited exercise. So, what me and my family did on Monday, I think, was that we all went to where my grandma is going to be scattered. Half of her ashes are going to be scattered, and it was a really nice spot. We were all 2 meters apart, I promise you. Yeah, so that was like quite nice, and it was just that. Yeah, so now I don't know where I was going with that thought, to be honest. But anyway, moving on to more relevant stuff to all of you. But this week I've been hard at work at the clinical psychology book that I'm hoping to release in June, and it's almost done. Okay. Yeah, so I'm really pleased with it, and it's definitely made and it's sort of definitely revitalized my interest in clinical psychology, because before I was thinking a bit, oh, clinical psychology, is it for me? But now I'm a lot more interested in it. Yeah, so that's the backup career, unless the writing stuff doesn't take off as quickly as I wanted to. But 7 years to the end of my doctorate, hopefully, and I'd love to be a doctor. Anyway, but that's that, and also. But this is the only last thing that I'll mention in the personal update. But last night I was thinking about the future of the writing businesses, and I can thankfully say I should have some psychology courses for you in the next few weeks or by the end of June, because that's the sort of, I don't know, June I plan to make some courses up for you all just to keep you entertained, busy, and you can learn psychology from me. Yes, so if you like the sound of my voice, then you can learn some psychology with me, and you can also see me in a video. So yeah, so that you've got to look forward to. If you're looking forward to that, I'm very grateful. Anyway, anyway though, but more on that in recent weeks. And if there's any particular topics that you want me to cover for my books, then please email me at connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net, because I would love to hear from you. And that goes toward anything if you ever want to contact me, please tweet me at sci-fi whiteley or connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net. And as a very last quick little mention, I've also recorded Abnormal Psychology second edition in audiobook, so that should be edited and released in the next week. So, but I'll have more. But I'll have more for you on that in the personal update of the next episode. So just very quickly, and as another very quick note, there's tons of quick notes in today's episode. All of the paperbacks are now available on Amazon in paperback and larger print edition for Biological Psychology second edition, Cognitive Psychology second edition, and Abnormal Psychology second edition. So if you want to get the paperback version, then you can get that. And as a very, very quick reminder, that you only have till Friday the 29th of May to get $2.90 off the Biological, Cognitive and Abnormal Psychology second edition on the ebooks. Before they increase on the price on the Friday. Yeah, so that's on all major ebook retailers, including Amazon, Kobo, and Apple. So today's episode is sponsored by Psychology of Human Relationships second edition, available in paperback and ebook format on all major ebook platforms. So, do you want to learn why human relationships are important? Do you want to learn what causes human relationships to form? Do you want to learn why humans show prosocial behaviour? If the answer is yes to any of these questions and more, then this is the book for you, as we investigate how human relationships form, types of love and relationships, and the psychology of prosocial behaviour. By the end of this book, you will know why human relationships are important, how human relationships are formed and more. If you like this book, then you will love my social coach psychology book as well. Yes, and then this book goes into, and then it explains the different formations of relationships, like how the biological, cognitive, and social factors can form friendships and sexual relationships, and also a communication, attraction, and breakdown. Yes, and then it also goes on to many other little things. So I love this book, and I hope that you will too. So let's move on to the content part of the episode. Moving on to the content part of today's episode, we're going to be looking at sleep. So first of all, we're going to look at what is sleep. So I personally do kind of find all these sort of questions to be great because what is sleep is one of those really weird questions, because how the hell would you describe sleep to someone? Because we all know what sleep is technically, but how do you put it into words? So thankfully I did manage to find 3 very good definitions of what sleep is. One definition of sleep is a readily reversible state of reduced responsiveness to and interaction with the environment. God, that's a scientific definition. Then another one is sleep is a naturally occurring state characterized by reduced or absent consciousness, relatively suspended sensory activity, and inactivity of nearly all voluntary muscles. There is not a normal definition on here, or one for everyday people. So sleep represents an alternative state of consciousness. Thank you, Munson and Jassif 2017, and that's actually my biological psychology lecturer. So thank you him. And his first name is, I actually forget right now. Amir, yeah, that's his first one at the University of Kent. If you ever get to meet him, he is great. But the important thing to note, though, is that sleep is a universal behaviour that is displayed by all higher vertebrates, or mammals and birds, and interestingly, some cold-blooded vertebrates that do it. So now what we're going to be looking at, how does sleep actually work? Because when I first came across this topic, I was really interested in it, but quite immediately I was met with this really weird word called the circadian rhythm, which I quite love saying, to be honest, because I know I'm weird, but circadian. Was it really does sound like something from like sci-fi, to be honest, like the circadian system, or let's go to circadian, or I don't know, one more random example, or the Circadian Legion. Oh, I might actually use that in a story at some point. So anyway, yeah, I digress. So I apologise. A circadian rhythm can be defined in simple terms as a circular rhythm that the body goes through. In terms of sleep, the circadian rhythm is our melatonin levels, which is a type of hormone, as this drops during the day as we wake up, but it remains low during the day and increases as we get closer to bedtime, and remains high during the night. But before it comes a full circle and it drops back down to lower levels in the morning. And the circadian rhythm for sleep is not the only rhythm in our body, because many of our bodily functions follow a circadian rhythm, and these are the products of endogenous influences, and these are influences that originate from inside, and exogenous influences, and these are influences from outside the body. So some of these exogenous influences include light, temperature, and the environment, because this is actually very important to us. So the purpose of the endogenous rhythm is to keep our internal body in sync with the outside world, which is very important, especially when you consider that the human circadian clock generates a rhythm that is actually longer than 24 hours when there is no cue, as supported by Kelly et al. 1999, when they studied some naval officers on 18-hour shifts. So these external influences, these cues are very important to us, because they are needed to reset the circadian rhythm. And this is what's known as I'm completely going to butcher this term, but it's a Zembeta. Completely said it completely wrong, and this is known as a time trigger. Although, out of all the stimulus that the human body encounters, light is crucial for resetting the rhythm. Overall, the human body runs on a biological clock, which is the most pop psychology reference I can actually think of, that needs to reset itself as we need stimuli in order to do that. So now we're going to have a very quick look at the mechanisms of the biological clock, because how the hell does this biological clock run? So there are three main mechanisms that are involved in this clock, and these include melatonin, which is the hormone I mentioned, genes that produce certain proteins, which is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, also known as SCN. The SCN is part of the hypothalamus, and it's the main center of the circadian rhythm for sleep and temperature. If the CSN is damaged, then this results in less constant body rhythms that aren't synchronized with the environmental patterns of light as well as dark. In addition, cells in the CSN fire the action potentials, which is all to do with the nervous system. It's too complicated to explain that right here. But in other words, it's basically how neurons fire and how they work together in a very specific rhythm that are generated by the CSN are genetically controlled. Additionally, light resets the CSN via a small branch of the optic nerve called the retinal hypothalamus path that travels directly from the retina, which is in the eye, to the CSN. The way how the CSN affects sleep is because the CSN controls activity in other areas of the brain, like the pineal gland. The pineal gland is important, and even now I'm just thinking of all the people from the past, the really important figures. I thought the pineal gland was the I forget this one person. I know it's in my biological book, but he thought that the pineal gland was how the soul and the body interacted. Oh, I'm actually gonna have to look that up now. Where was I? Yes, that the pineal gland is important as it secretes melatonin, a hormone that regulates the circadian rhythm and the circannual rhythm, as well as increased 2 to 4 hours before bedtime. This is a lot of information, but the last one we're going to have a very quick look at is the genetic basis of the circadian rhythm. So there are two genes that are involved in the circadian rhythm, and they are timeless. This gene produces proteins called TIM, and period. This gene produces protein called PER, but they both spell the same. So to be honest, they're probably actually called TIM, and then the other one's probably called PER. This is a podcast, and this is my podcast. I'm just going to say it how I want. So when TIM and PER are in high concentration, they interact with with a protein clock to induce sleepiness. That just sounds so childish. However, if the clock gene is damaged, then this can result in a reduced sleep as well as erratic sleeping patterns. Furthermore, mutations in the PER gene can result in strange circadian rhythm. So we've looked at a lot of different ways about how sleep works and how the circadian rhythm works. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the show notes, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. And if you want a free 8-book psychology box set, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.